Welcome to another episode of the Pentacast Podcast. My name is Andrew Bella, your host. Alongside me is not Ryan once again, but it's the two on the couch, Josh and Ty.
Hola. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
I'm doing good.
Pretty great.
Doing great?
Fantastic.
Okay, can I please tell
Absolutely.
the congregation here, whoever's listening or viewing, a lot of people are going to be surprised when they hear this, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know. Before every episode, or most episodes, I should say, we try to have a word of prayer, and I kind of threw one on Ty, and I threw him a curveball and asked him to bless this episode, and with his fervent prayer, he ignited the room.
Dude, I was feeling it.
Oh, I have no doubt you put everything you had in it.
I can still see the tear in Andrew's eye.
I'm telling you, man. Oh, Ty, listen. It's like those moments when you say things in prayer and everyone's done it. So Ty was, he was totally caught off guard, but I said, Ty, lead us in a word of prayer before we get started. And immediately you see like where somebody's caught off guard where they totally go super serious all of a sudden, like, and he starts praying. He goes, God, help us, Jesus, and to strengthen you, Lord. When he said that he was praying to strengthen God, I'm like, man, the Lord's low.
Not what I meant to say, but
But anyways, we had a good laugh about that. And so, look, I cannot tell you how many times I've said the wrong thing in prayer, multiple times. I'm sure that if everybody was honest with themselves, they would probably go, you know what? If you heard all the things that I used to say when I'm praying by myself, you would laugh. You would laugh. Good Lord, if we had everything that was edited out of these, or supposed to be edited out of these episodes. Boy, I'll tell you what, we give some laughs, but oh man, what a great way to start an episode off, to get all the humor out of the way, because what we're going to be talking about today is such a serious and such an amazing story of a wonderful, wonderful person that we have here in the studio, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce her now, Sister Leigha Metcalf. Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be here.
Your excitement is radiating right now. And I am so honored to have you. And you were one of 25 or 30 women in my wedding. And you were second to the bride. What do you call those? You were the maid of honor.
Maid of honor.
You're the maid of honor. I always joke whenever I bring up my wedding, because my wife thought that she had to have every single friend that she ever had in her entire life in our wedding. So it looked like a football team up there ready to either tackle me or run us off. And so Leigha was in our wedding. She was a maid of honor. And you are my wife's best friend. And a lot of people don't know you. They've heard about you, believe it or not. There's a lot of people back west that say, hey, that Leigha girl, we heard about what happened, but there's so many times that details get lost in translation, like we know, but there's nothing like hearing somebody's story
Straight from the source. And you two gentlemen sitting on the couch
just said that you had never heard her story. You just admitted that you had never heard her story. Mm-hmm. So this is awesome. So Leigha, welcome to the podcast. First off, what do you think of the environment? What do you think about everything? Did you think that your friend's husband could pull this off?
Yeah, I walked in and I was like, wow,
this is
super homey, super
better
nice.
than you've ever expected.
Yes.
How about the chair? Chair's nice.
Very comfy.
Well, welcome.
I'm sure Amy picked it out, but very nice.
Yeah, you want to know how you know Amy picked it out? Because it was at a thrift store for $10 for both chairs.
Yeah.
So that's her.
I'm right there with her on that.
But welcome. So what I like to ask everybody when we get into their story is, where did it all begin?
So it was actually a summer of 2015. I had lost my mom 2 years prior. Actually, 3 years prior. I had gotten married 2 years prior. So newlyweds, trying to just figure out life. Decided we wanted to try to have children, and cancer was never part of that plan. So started having some trouble. Went on to the doctor in June and discovered I had endometriosis and some female issues, and I had to have a surgery for that. So after that surgery, I had a lot of bleeding, and that's when my doctor referred me to have a colonoscopy, and that's how I found out that I had stage 3 colorectal cancer. Actually, Brother Terry Morgan from our church was in the office with his doctor, and they told me that very day, July 31st, 2015, that I had cancer. They didn't know exactly what stage it was at that point, but they said, we can tell right off this is cancer. And as you can imagine, that floored us.
How long were you married?
2 years exactly.
2 years. And
exactly?
June 2013 we got married, so this was exactly 2 years later.
2 years, and you have your life ahead of you, and your world stops. I remember my wife calling me and asking me to pray, but she also said, don't say anything. She said, she actually wouldn't even give me your name. And I said, who are you talking about? She said, Andrew, there's a young girl in our church that I think has cancer. And I said, who are you talking about? I said, usually if it's, Amy calls me and she's like, I can't tell you who it is, but we're going to have another baby in the church. I'm so excited. And I'm like, I don't care. Let me get back to work. I'm just being honest. But Amy, this one bothered me because it was bothering her. And I said, who in the world? And she told me that you had talked to her about it or another. And I was shocked. I was like, surely something is wrong. Because how old were you?
I was 27. I was always the healthy one out of all those girls growing up. I was the one they picked on for drinking water and eating yogurt and salads. And, I never would have dreamed at 27 that I would have cancer, I lost my mom to cancer. So, of course, that idea had came in my mind maybe for years down the road when I was in my 50s that might be a problem for me, but not at 27 before I'd ever even had kids.
Yeah. So what was the plan of attack right then and there? So you and Jeremy are faced with this. Jeremy's your husband. And what's going through your mind?
So we were just in total shock. I remember Jeremy calling Brother Jody almost as soon as we left the doctor's office and let him know, please start praying, spread the word for people to pray. And we actually went and sat down and ate at Olive Garden and just tried to process what we had just heard. And, I had to call all my family. I think that was the worst part of it, calling Christy and telling her that our mom's died 2 years ago from cancer and now I've got cancer.
Yeah, that word's coming up again.
Yeah. But the next few weeks were just a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, scans, just being referred to all these different surgeons and having them say, my first surgeon appointment, the doctor said, you're so young, I don't feel comfortable operating on you. He said, I know you want to have children, and I don't feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. So I was referred to North Georgia and then finally to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville where I decided that would be my surgeon. So, I was waitressing at DJ's at the time. So I'll just go ahead, and this is really the first big time God let me know. I call these my 3 confirmations. I didn't realize it, in the middle of it all that God was going to give me those 3 confirmations. But looking back, man, if I'd not had these 3 confirmations, I don't know that I wouldn't have walked through it the same way with the same faith that I did. But I was waitressing at DJ's that night. It was about a week or less from when I'd found out I had cancer. And wild, crazy night waitressing. Hardly no time to do anything but here's your food, here's your ticket. Nice to see you, bye. So I was running around, and this one elderly man, Brother Leroy Spivey, who was a regular at DJ's.
He's a sweet guy.
Oh, yeah. So I had waited on him a ton, and normally his wife was with him, and she wasn't with him that night, and he was already done eating. I'd given him his ticket, and he just kept sitting there. And I was running by again to go get somebody's food, and he stopped me and he said, before I leave, I've got to tell you something that God's telling me to tell you. And, everything just stood still in that moment, all the noise around me. And I was like, okay, I've got to listen to this. This is going to be important for me. And he said, God wants you to know that his eye is on the sparrow and he is watching you. And to my knowledge, he didn't have a clue of what I just found out a few days earlier. And that was that first wave of peace that God gave me, that, okay, everything's going to be all right.
How awesome is that?
He's going to take me through this. Then, weeks went on and more doctor's appointments. And I went up to the Mayo and met my surgeon, and he let me know that he thought I should do 3 months of chemo and radiation before surgery, then have the surgery, and then do another 3 months of chemo and radiation. So we let him know, we want children. How's this going to affect that? And he pretty much told me, you've got two choices. You're going to live by doing chemo and radiation, and you probably won't have kids. He pretty much told me that.
Man, that's tough.
He said either you do what I'm, telling you to do, or you don't, and you die, and you don't ever, you don't live to see your kids grow up. If you do have kids, you're going to die, a few years later, pretty much was all he gave me. And I don't believe he at all believed in God, or he never spoke of anything about God can work this miracle for you, or anything of that sort. But I did let him know, I was going to be praying about it, that I hadn't decided what I was going to do yet. During that time, someone at church gave me a book about healing cancer naturally. And then on top of knowing that I probably wouldn't be able to have kids with the chemo and radiation, I just really started praying, God, should I do that? What do I need to do? So Dr. Martia at the Mayo, he said, I want you to go to Dr. Jaw in Douglas, and he's going to be your cancer doctor close to home. And Dr. Jaw was actually Mama's cancer doctor.
Oh, wow.
So I had sat in that same office with him, with Mama, just 2 years earlier. And then there I went that day, actually right by myself. I'm not sure what Jeremy had going on that day, but I went right by myself. And he started telling me the same thing Dr. Martia did. If you don't choose to do the chemo and the radiation, you're probably not going to live, and you're not going to have kids, even if you do live, So they were killing my chances of coming through this the way I was wanting to, Mm-hmm. I knew God had to do something. So,
yeah. So
I left Dr. Jaw. He said, I'm going to order you the chemo pill. And I told him, I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I'm going to go home and pray about it. He said, well, in the meantime, I'm going to set up you an appointment to go see the radiation doctor in Waycross. So in the next few days, Jeremy went with me to that appointment. And at this point, I feel like I had almost made up my mind. I'm like, I'm just going to keep telling these doctors no matter what they tell me. I'm not going through with this chemo and radiation. But I didn't really know from God yet. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like me. I didn't know for sure if that's what God wanted me to do. That's just how I was feeling, and I needed to know that God was saying the same thing, So,
and this is I don't mean to interrupt, because this is amazing what you went through, but this is such a personal and intimate decision with you and your husband. And there are so many voices that are, I'm talking about doctors here that are telling you, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And you talk about when Brother Leroy Spivey spoke to you in a busy restaurant, how everything just kind of muted and all you heard was those words. How difficult was this to stop all the other noise and just hear what you needed to hear?
Extremely hard, because, I'm reading all these books. I'm hearing people tell me, you've got to do that chemo and radiation. Well-meaning family and friends. But still, I was feeling another direction, but I had to know it was God. And like you said, it's hard when you're thinking about so many different things. I've got cancer, am I even going to live, So
your family's telling you that, and they're concerned about your well-being, but you and Jeremy have a real large desire to have kids.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of the balance there.
Jeremy had always wanted 4 kids. Now that we have 2, he has since changed his mind. But we were both dead set. We wanted children. We didn't want to adopt, although that would be a great route. But we wanted to, see if God had in store for us our own children, and we were not ready to give up that dream.
For sure. Your lives just started.
27 and Jeremy was 29. So I went on to that radiation appointment, and from the moment I walked in the room, that man was not like any of the doctors I had met. He started asking me questions about what I wanted. He said, when did y'all get married? How old are you? Do you want children? And he was just kind of getting to know me. Yeah. And then he spoke the words, I don't think you should have radiation. And as soon as he said that, and he walked out for a minute. He's like, I guess to give me time to process what he had told me. He said, if you want children, this radiation is going to annihilate that, that hope. So I don't think you need to go through with the radiation. So he walked out of the room for a minute, and I started crying, and I just told Jeremy, I was like, I feel God in here. I was like, wow. I don't know if that man's even a Christian, but I feel like God has put him here for me to let me know, my confirmation number 2, I call it, that he's going to take care of me, and I don't need to go the route of chemo and radiation, and I just need to have that surgery done. So in the next few days, I got a phone call from Dr. Jaw saying, here's your chemo order. We've got to fill this order. And I just told him, I said, I've made up my mind. Don't order me those chemo pills. I'm not doing it. And, of course, I heard once again, you're making the wrong decision. I heard it from him. And then I went to see Dr. Murcia again, and that's when I let him know, I want to go ahead and schedule my surgery, and I don't want to do the chemo and radiation. So, of course, he went through that whole big talk again, and at that point, God had strengthened me enough that, I was okay with just saying, no, I know what I've got to do. I'm just going to do that surgery. And that's what I did. And about mid-September, I had the surgery, and they got 100% of my cancer. And, you go back home, and actually, after I got out of the hospital, just a few days, I think it was, Amy was texting saying she had just found out she was pregnant with Sadie. And, I started, that doubt and fear started creeping back in, even though I knew they had just got all my cancer out, and I knew God had, let me know that I'd done the right thing, but I started praying again. God,
she felt so guilty texting you that too, by the way.
I know she did. I knew that's why she had texted.
And there's so many people that are telling you, do this, don't do this, you're making a bad decision. But they don't, it's so easy. Like Ty said, that's a desire you and Jeremy had to have children. It's so easy for me to go, but don't you want to live? Mm-hmm. And you're over there praying, going, God is helping me through this, walking me through this process, and I think it's just going to be all right. But you're talking to a bunch of people that haven't prayed about it, that really aren't affected one way or the other, whichever outcome you choose. They're not affected by it. So we're so quick to speak, but yet tuning out all that noise again and just hearing the voice of the Lord, your desire was to be a mama.
Mm-hmm. After I got out of the hospital, honestly, having a child was the last thing on my mind. I'll be honest. Of course, in the future, I was hoping it'll happen, but I never dreamed of what God was about to send me. Just 6 weeks after I got out of the hospital, I found out I was pregnant. And that was the last time I even asked God to let me know if I had done the right thing, because I knew immediately, I've done the right thing. I did not need that chemo and radiation. God has just confirmed it by giving me a child right here in the midst of cancer.
One of the hardest things you ever went through. And how many weeks you said?
It was about 6 weeks. It was October when I found out. It felt like such a miracle because it was the last thing I was thinking of. And during that time, I had an ostomy bag, actually, that I was consumed with during that time. I was supposed to have that for 3 months after the surgery. But, of course, when I became pregnant, that ended up being a 14-month ordeal.
Yikes.
And that was actually the worst part of my entire cancer experience, but God saw me through that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was your baby's name?
Molly Joyce. She was actually born on my mom's birthday. So my mom's name was Joyce. So
you guys never met Leah's mom, did you?
So she passed away in 2012.
12. Yep.
I didn't start coming to the church until 2014. So
yeah, unless I saw her somewhere before, outside or something like
probably
that.
when y'all were much younger.
Yeah.
And I guess knowing the background of how your family had just went through that, I remember, I'll never forget going to visit your mother in the hospital. I didn't know her very well at all. And Amy loved your mother. And so when Amy and I were engaged, we went to Waycross, I believe is where she was. And we visited her, and they were only allowing like 2 people at the time. And so I was telling Amy, I was like, look, you guys go. I don't even know her that well. And when I walked into the room, she shot out of her bed, and you could tell, they had her on a lot of sedation or whatever because she was in really, really bad shape at that point. And Byron, her husband, which is your dad, was in there. Amy was in there, and I was in there. I didn't know this woman maybe 2 months or about a year, I guess I should say, just going to church. I'm getting lost in the time.
That's a big difference. I knew her 2 months. No, it was a year.
Well, you had went to church with her, but you hadn't had any intimate.
Right. He's trying to ruin a very, very intimate moment. But she shot out of that bed, guys, and she went, Andy. And I was like, Andy? I haven't heard that since I was in 4th grade twice. She goes, Andy. And I said, hey, Sister Joyce. And she said, I want to go home so bad. And I said, yes, ma'am. And at this point, I'm like hyperventilating. I'm like, why is she talking to me? Like I was not used to these situations. And she looked at me, and she was almost crying. And she said, can you please get me out of here? Will you please take me home? And I went, Sister Joyce, I can't help you. And she went, okay. And I walked out of that.
Feeling terrible.
I walked out of that room, and I told my wife, I said, don't you ever do this to me again. I was crying, sobbing like a baby. I could not help it. But your mother was so sick, she couldn't attend our wedding, and we had it recorded. And the one thing that Amy wanted to do when we got home was she wanted to go to your mom and dad's house and show her the wedding.
I remember it.
And I had an aunt and uncle from California that she just went through the exact same deal that your mother was going through. If I'm not mistaken, it was the same kind of cancer or whatever, They went to her house and prayed with your mom. And my Aunt Teresa thought it was really funny because she's from California. They're out here in South Georgia going to their nephew's wedding. And your mom looked up at her and she said, I like your wig. And she knew that she had lost her hair from the cancer treatment that she was going through. And but that connection with your mom, the very first Mother's Day, your mother passed away when?
March 27th of that year.
Okay, March 27th. And Mother's Day is in May. I'll never forget that Mother's Day. I don't know if you guys came to church that day, or you may have.
We didn't.
It was flooding cats and dogs. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the rain.
I'll never forget it. Usually Mother's Days are always sunny and, real pretty weather. But this Mother's Day, it was the nastiest day ever. And I'll never forget leaving church that day thinking how it was flooding. And I thought they're probably mourning for Sister Joyce. And all of that was kind of going through my mind whenever we heard that you had cancer. And that's just small compared to what probably was going through your mind, But then in the middle of it, God's given you confirmation. We've heard about the first and the second one. And then was the third one the baby?
Oh, yeah.
So we heard the 3 confirmations that God was going to see you through the whole ordeal.
That God was going to take care of me. As soon as I found out I was pregnant, I knew there was nothing else I needed to worry about. I had done the right thing. God was going to take me through it. I've got 2 kids now. They're 6 and 3, and it's been 7 years since that day in July that I found out I had cancer.
Yeah. So during your road to recovery, what obstacles have you had other than, getting over some of these surgeries and stuff like that? But obviously, the devil does come back knocking on your mind and saying, hey, you better go get checked out. So how do you combat that as well?
So every few years, I have a scan or a colonoscopy, and honestly, Jeremy, he tells me all the time, don't worry about it. God said he was going to do it. He did it, and we don't have to worry about it. And I have had some fear, but honestly, just a little bit of prayer, and I'm right back at that faith again.
Yeah.
And the church, of course, the church has prayed for me so much, so going up and getting prayer at the church really encourages me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're such a miracle. People with your unique type of testimony, what I have seen, and we've seen it with the comments where we'll post this online, your story, and you would be shocked at how many people, young people, are going through something similar. So they may not be battling cancer, but a young churchgoer, a young lady might be listening to your story right now, and she just got faced with some pretty horrific news herself. That's actually how we got in contact with Sister Hannah Davidson. She heard the healing miracle testimonies, the stories of how God healed, and she got the bravery to come on the podcast, call in and tell her story. So there's so many people that are going to be listening to this, and they're probably facing a similar situation as to you. How would you give them the encouragement that they need to go through it?
I actually just messaged a lady in our community last week and let her know what I would give as that advice, and I told her, anything that God sends your way, small or big, if it's him letting you know that he's taking care of you, hang on, grab that and hang on to it, and don't think about the fears or the worries. Just hold on to those confirmations, those little things that he sends your way. Just hang on to that with all your might and just trust him through it.
Amen.
I know Josh and I were both in the church, saved, but when all of your trial was going on, but I guess I really wasn't involved. I guess I didn't know about it.
This happened, you said, in 2015?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I guess I was just oblivious. Obviously, I mean.
And that's easy to do.
Can you?
Not in the middle of it.
But think about that. I mean, you guys are going to church. We're to bear each other's burdens. And of course, now disclaimer. Okay,
we were 13 to 14.
13 and 14 years old.
I'll carry it. Let's go.
I'll take you to the mountain. Let's roll.
I was 15 at the time, and Papa got diagnosed in October of the year before.
But it's just crazy how, I didn't mean to interrupt, but,
no, it's fine.
They're going through the trial of a lifetime. We're over there just bebopping along, no idea.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously, I'm sure, my parents knew about it, but.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I asked Nana about it, she'd know about it.
Yeah.
She could tell me everything.
But they weren't going to talk to me about it. I mean,
I don't want to talk to you now.
I'm not talking about you.
It's so true, though, when you think about everything that you're going through is really on a personal level.
It's perspective.
If nothing's really going on in your life, I mean, if something happened to your kids, okay, at the age, I have a 6-year-old and I have a 3-year-old, and our kids are they love each other, okay? If something happens to your kiddo, okay, I can relate to that, and it'll hurt me because I'm like, I know, my 3-year-old, if something happened like that to my son, that would hurt me. 2 seconds later, I don't even think about it. That's why it's so important when somebody says, I have a burden for so-and-so. It's not just, hey, I got a burden. I used to throw that so loosely around, like, man, I got a burden for you. No, you don't. You just want to know what's going on in their life. You don't have a burden for them. If you have a burden for that person, just pray for them. You know?
You don't have to let them know.
If you want to know what's going on, if there's gossip circling around their life, call them and say, hey, I want to know what's going on. And if they tell you, you got what you wanted. At least you didn't lie about it. But when you get a hold of a burden, and like a sister Leigha is sitting in your church and she says, y'all pray for me, I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Well, the story is being wrote before our very eyes. Little did we know, oh, you know, you think about it at lunch before you eat your cheeseburger. Oh, and God touched Leigha, amen. But you are being faced with a decision of a lifetime. Mm-hmm. That's why it is so important to get under a load for your brothers and sisters who you go to war with, because we need each other. And those 3 confirmations, I know they came from the Lord, because they gave you exactly what you needed, the strength to make it through this trial, this storm that you found yourself in at such a young age.
Leigha, you got a great story. It's a wonderful thing God did in your life. Just amazing. Again, it's great to look back on it and see how far the Lord's brought you, the confirmations, the strength He gave you. You probably strengthened Him up in your prayer too, up in your faith. I understand. But that we can hold on to His promises that He
Amen.
gives us, the promises He gave to you. I know it's just like Andrew said, you probably hit with doubt daily, but He's going to take you through it.
And think about this. I know you've probably told your girls. I know Violet probably, she can't comprehend, but Molly's you've already probably talked to Molly about it a little bit. But can you imagine when they're young adults, maybe young married women, that they call mom, I'm going through this or whatever. Well, honey, I was faced with a big decision too, and I made my choice, God's choice, whatever He wanted in the situation. That's what I chose, and now I have you because of that. And I just think it's an amazing story. You're an amazing person who's given hope to a lot of people, and hopefully this story just goes out to the masses and encourages everyone that hears it.
I hope so. I want it to bring God glory.
Amen.
Everything He did for me.
Amen. Amen. Well, that's what this podcast is all about. We want to strengthen you with the words on the podcast, but also try to strengthen the Lord, perhaps. We love you. Have a great week. Over and under.